New York Toy Fair 2019 is just open at the time of this recording, and as is its custom, the night before, the Toy Industry Association handed out its prizes for items of the year. Action figure of the year, doll of the year, construction toy of the year, all these types of categories. In the category of game of the year, the winner is Villainous, designed by Forrest Prusen Creative, published by Wonderforge, which is part of the Ravensburger family. Now, this is a well-done, surprising winner, I will say. A 2 to 6 player game in which each player represents one of the Disney villains, as represented on the cover here by Maleficent. And you are trying to achieve your goal to win. And it's wonderful that a game like this has won Game of the Year in this category by this group, because previous winners, if you look at the last few years, have just been sort of emblematic of how games are still pictured in the public mind. The description is often children's game, blah, blah, blah. This is how they describe that category. And the winners have matched that description, where in 2018, the winner was Soggy Doggy, where you had this mop-like dog that would get wet, or you try not to get it wet. And you're just, okay, whatever. The 2017 winner was Yeti in My Spaghetti, which has a plastic Yeti that's balancing on these plastic strands of spaghetti over a bowl. Okay, yeah, there's a dexterity challenge and all that, but whatever. One of the nominees in that year was Imhotep by Phil Walker Harding and Cosmos, and it would have been great to see a title like that sort of pushed into the public eye, but that did not happen. 2016 winner, Pie Face, a game in which you turn a crank and you may or may not get hit in the face with a bunch of whipped cream. That's it. There's nothing to that. And those experiences with those particular games might be interesting and enjoyable, but it seems limiting compared to what is possible with game design. So it seems fabulous to see this game win. Now, to follow up, for 2019 at the Open of New York Toy Fair, Ravensburger, parent company, has announced a standalone expansion called Wicked to the Core, which is for 2 to 3 players. This is a standalone game, and it features the Evil Queen from Snow White, and Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog, and Hades from Achilles. So you can have 2 or 3 players each take one of those villains and then try to complete their master plan. And then you can mix any of those villains in the standalone expansion with those in the base game, and you can mix and match as you wish because of the nature of gameplay. In the game, each player has their own individual board with their own figure on the board. You have your own deck of cards. And the colored cards are the cards that you will be using to try to carry out whatever your objective is. The white cards are particular to you as the Evil Queen. They feature all these characters, in this case from Snow White, with the dwarves and the wishing well, and of course Snow White herself. And other players will play these fate cards on you to try to stop you. Effectively, you are in your own world. You're in your film trying to carry out your task, and other things are going to stop you. But you're not going to have something like Aladdin coming in to attack Dr. Facilier. That does not happen. You don't mix the movies that way. And it might be disappointing from an interactive standpoint that you don't see something like that, but it fits more with the movies existing in their own world. And everything makes sense with you as that villainous character trying to carry out your plan, and you see the characters within that movie working against you, sort of retelling that story. On most turns, you'll start with 4 cards in hand. You must move your figure to a different location than the one you currently occupy. The dwarf's cottage is off limits for the queen, for reasons I'll explain in a moment. But you go to a space, and it will depict 4 actions there, and you can take each of those actions once. So if I go to the parade, I can get 2 power. I can then use power to play a card by paying the cost shown in the upper left-hand corner. If I play an item or an ally, it goes onto my board, sitting down below. If it's an effect, I carry out the effect. Each character sometimes has different powers available to them or different things. Hades has titans only Hades has Titans. Only the Evil Queen has ingredients, and you'll see how those cards come into play. You can discard as many cards as you want from your hand. To a discard pile, I can move items or allies, which I may want to do to attack or defend myself in certain spaces. You can take a fate action. So if someone takes a fate action against me, they're going to draw 2 cards from my fate deck, and they're going to do something with them. If it's a hero, it goes down on a particular location, and it will cover spaces and make them unavailable to me. So if I go to this space, I can no longer discard or get power. And I have to get rid of that hero in order to free that space once again. I can vanquish, which is what I need to do to get rid of that hero. And you may be able to move items on your board, or in some cases, move heroes, as is the case with the Evil Queen. There's all different reasons for doing this. You take each of those actions up to 1 time, and at the end of your turn, you fill your hand to 4 cards, and then the next player goes. The ideal part of the Villainous game design is that each character has their own victory condition that makes sense for them as they are reliving the plot of their film. And this is also the reason why the villains are isolated from one another, where I need to do my thing, and the only things that are going to complicate it, that are going to prevent me from doing that, are the heroes, the bad guys, who are going to affect me in particular ways to stop me from my particular goal. For Hades to win, Hades must bring 3 Titans to Mount Olympus. The Titans exist only in the Hades deck. There are 5 different Titans. When you play a Titan, you must play it in the underworld, and you can take different actions, such as the move spaces on the board, of which there are 2, or particular cards such as Get Ready to Rumble or Planets Align, and then you can move those Titans. And each time you move a Titan, it has a special power that will take effect, depending on whatever the circumstances are on your board. And if you get 3 of them into Mount Olympus, well, at the start of your turn, then you win. The heroes and other cards in your fate deck will stop that from happening by preventing Titans from moving into particular spaces, or by trapping them, that is, turning them sideways, which means they are not effective, and you must untrap them in order to win. Playing Hades is the most straightforward of the characters. Put down the Titans, move them to Mount Olympus. That's it. Your deck is going to support that by allowing you additional movement or ways to untrap your Titans as heroes are played against you. You want to straighten them up again so that you can continue moving them, or so that you can use their strength to eliminate heroes that are placed against you. The problem with doing that, of course, is that when you use a vanquish action to remove a hero to stop Zeus or Achilles from bothering you, well, then your Titan or your allies are going to be removed from the board as well, except that there are some special cards in your deck that will keep that from happening. So you can still take out the hero, but leave your Titan in place so that you can hopefully shift them over on later turns. Dr. Facilier plays somewhat like other villains in that you're going to play items and allies on your own side of the board. They're going to give you special powers, but to live up to the spirit of the movie, you must call on your friends from the other side. So not the earthly characters that you have in front of you. You, of course, will have heroes and items that will be played against you, but you must call on fortune. You must call on fate. You have some cards that when you play them go into a fortune pile. And as you do things with a fortune pile, you can pull out the cards will tell, and it will pull cards back from the fortune pile to use their specific fortune ability shown on them. Well, to make things a little more complicated, you have to put your own talisman into play. If you remember, it played an important part in the movie, and it must be on your side of the board when you pull Rule New Orleans from the fortune pile with the cards will tell. If you are able to pull this back from the fortunes, and the effect on it says if you control the talisman, then you win. 2 things complicate the victory condition for Dr. Facilier. First, if heroes with strength of 3 or less are played against him, then the talisman is attached to those heroes. Right? It's the recreation of the movie where the talisman goes back and forth and people keep grabbing and then it comes back again, and he must have control of it. So if a hero comes into play and grabs the talisman, then you need to use your allies and items against that hero, vanquish them from play, and the talisman will then come back to your side of the board. So that's the struggle for control of the talisman. For the fortune pile, as people play fate against you and play those effects and heroes, they're going to add other cards to your fortune pile that you don't want to add. If they don't do anything against you, if they don't touch the fate pile, then your fortune pile will be very tiny and will contain things that are only good for you. But as they play things, they can throw allies and items and other cards into your fortune pile, and then when you play, the cards will tell. You shuffle that fortune pile, you draw 3 of those cards, and then you can use them in whatever order you want, but they will often have things like you have to lose 2 power and then your turn ends, or this card is removed for no effect. This isn't good. Or other things get shuffled in there. Your fortune pile gets polluted with all the things you don't want. And you have some special effects in your deck that can trim things out of the fortune pile as people play fate and work against you. So it's this struggle back and forth, the tug of war of the talisman, and then the tug of war too of the fortune pile. This all relies on other people taking actions against you. If they don't mess with you, then you can dig for what you want, and fortune will be yours quickly. At first glance, playing the Evil Queen might seem simple, because your challenge is only defeat Snow White. What could be so hard about that? Well, you have ingredient cards in your deck, 2 of each of 4 ingredients, and the first time you play a particular ingredient card, it's going to go in your pot below your board here, and it's out of your deck. So if you reshuffle, your deck is thinner, and you're more likely to get cards that are not ingredients. But that's okay, because you need to collect these 4 ingredients, each of which has their own special ability. When you do, the dwarf's cottage opens, and now you need to have Snow White in the dwarf's cottage so that you can defeat her. But Snow White is in your fate deck, and you can be sure that your opponents will be playing dwarves on you, each with their own abilities that will hinder you. You cannot be assured of them playing Snow White. Why would they give you a chance to defeat them if they don't have to? Well, you can help yourself out by calling on magic tomes, where you can activate the ability of the magic tomes with different powers here that, of course, your opponents will try to cover. But if they don't, you can activate the tomes, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, keep one of them, ideally to find the magic mirror, that then if you pay 3 power for the magic mirror, you can pull Snow White out from the deck wherever she is and drop her into the dwarf's cottage, whether it's unlocked or not. Once it's unlocked, well, then you need to go over and defeat Snow White. However, her strength increases based on the power of all the other heroes in play, and if Doc's out, you have to defeat Doc before you can defeat any other heroes, and you have no vanquish. There's no way to get rid of these heroes by vanquishing them. Instead, you have this special poison icon, because you must convert power to poison by visiting your laboratory, and only by piling up poison can you then poison the other heroes and remove them from play. Doc first in this case, and then you have to go and get Snow White, who's currently at 6 power, so you need 6 poison. But the fate cards will be pulling poison away from you, and if the magic mirror is destroyed, then it's hard to find Snow White in the first place. Thankfully, you have some cards to get that mirror back. Some black magic, which can pull an item or an ingredient out of the deck or the discard pile, because you need those ingredients in order to open the cottage to access Snow White, assuming that you can find her in the first place. There's a lot of wheels going on with the Evil Queen, somewhat similar to Captain Hook in the original Villainous set, where you had to defeat Peter Pan, which was in the Fate deck. But Peter Pan had a special clause that said if the opponent draws him, they must play Peter Pan. They must put him into play. And of course, you could take actions in order to further push Peter Pan out there by digging through the Fate deck on your own. So Evil Queen has a bit more going on where you need to get those ingredients first and put them into play in order to unlock things and give yourself more space. You want to have people play fate against you to pull all the cards out of the deck so that it's more likely that Snow White will turn up. But really, you're on your own there. You need to get the magic mirror. There's only one in your 30-card deck, so you're going to dig for it by using discard spaces to toss stuff quickly, or the magic tome so that you can draw things out. And of course, you want to thin your deck with the ingredients so that you can filter through everything more quickly. Somewhat similar to Ursula, how initially when I first played Ursula, I did not realize that there are only one copy each of the 2 cards you need in order to win. And if they're at the bottom of the deck, you have to dig through quickly to get them. You learn the abilities, or the requirements really, of each villain only as you play them. And initially you're in the play and have no clue what you're doing. But as you play again a second time, you have a much better plan for the path you need to take. How much do you need to dig? What's important to you in particular spaces? How do you need to defend yourself? What actions are most important? Because as heroes come on the board and start clogging things up, of course, it's going to limit what you do, which will make it slower, and you need to get rid of those heroes, and everything sort of gums up as you're trying to do things. What's the important things that you need to do in order to move yourself toward victory? It's interesting to look at each of these characters in a vacuum and see how their character deck and the fate deck have been designed together to work on their own, no matter who they're playing against. Because you have a particular challenge as the active player. You have everything you need in your own deck to solve the problem. I have the Titans, I have the action spaces to move them. I have the ingredients and the things I need to pull out Snow White. I can build my tiny fortune pile and then rule New Orleans after grabbing my talisman. All the requirements to stop them are in these fate decks, and the opponents have to play against you as much as they have to work towards their own victory. What's interesting in looking at Wicked to the core, and I've played each character only once on a review copy from Ravensburger, so again, first impressions at this point, is that the characters seem like they need more opposition from the other players. When I played Villainous, I still have not played all of the characters in Villainous as the active player. I played against them or played them, but it seemed much more like you were in a race to put everything together on your own first more quickly. It seemed like you were more isolated. Maybe it's only because I played 2 and 3 player games. I did not get into games of more people where you're going to have more fate from more random sources coming against you. So again, maybe this is my qualifications based on what I've played so far. But with Wicked to the core, it seemed much more like you needed the other people to take fate actions against you to stop you. And they could do it more readily. Dr. Facilier in particular, because as I mentioned, all the cards that you will choose to play that go into your fortune pile are good for you. And you'll have lots of allies that will have things that say lose 2 power, for the fortune ability. But that's never going to happen on your own because you are not putting it in your fortune pile. It's only when other people dig into your fate deck and they get cards that will say, draw the 2 top cards of Dr. Facilier's deck, and if you want, you can put either or both of those into the fortune pile. That's what's going to gum you up, is the choices of other people coming against you. But usually the fate actions, they're not the things that are helping you win. They're only the things that are stopping others, kind of incidental to what you are trying to do. And that happens over and over again. So with Hades, I'm just going to move the Titans. That's it. If no one does anything, it's only a matter of me piling up lots of energy and then using those spaces on the board and those cards and just zoop everyone over really quickly. That's all it is. So people need to play against me in order to stop me. The Evil Queen works the same way, where more heroes you pile on the board, the harder it is for me to go after Snow White. So you need that. The Queen already has a lot of things going on, but of course, everything you drop against the queen is going to cover up those spaces, which is going to keep you from doing things. So it feels like the expansion forces more interaction to stop someone from doing things. Again, maybe it's just my perception of what I played so far in the original game. Maybe I played poorly in the original game. Maybe it's that the expansion is designed for 2 or 3 players, and it feels more like it feels more driven in that direction. It's hard to say after playing each character only once. I've played the original game 5, 6 times now. Again, not covering all the characters. There's a lot of material in here. What's really impressive is that the instruction book in the expansion seems like it's blown up a bit more from the original game and more detailed in terms of what each action is doing, which is ideal. The game is not that complicated, but if you were picking this up off the shelf for the first time, you haven't played lots of modern games, you might feel somewhat overwhelmed with the possibilities for how things work. Especially, again, with Dr. Facilier, you keep reading these cards in your deck that say, oh, I get to remove things from the fortune pile. Why would I ever want to do that? No, that's not going to happen until people start playing against you. But they don't know that they need to play against you until they actually do it. So it's a hard learning process to figure out how things work. Initially, you're very much just in your own head, looking at your own boards. That's it. I'm just worrying about myself and what I need to do. And I'm not really concerned so much about you. But I have to learn to be concerned and learn that by adding on that fate action, by going to particular spaces that usually give me less power, so why would I want to do that? Well, it's going to gum you up as well. And ideally in a 2-player game, of course, anything that stops you is good for me. Once you add in additional players, well, I will hope that player 2 will go and do some fate against you so that I don't have to and I can focus on my own thing. Yeah, it's all the player dynamics of how you're going to circle around the table and figure out things. But there's more to explore in Wicked to the Core. Adding this to the base game, I can certainly imagine there will be more in the future. All right, complete this color wheel. Who's coming next?